Welcome back, 8th graders. All right, let's jump right into today's explainer, where we are going to look at your mind a bit differently. It is not just some basic storage box for random facts. No, it's an expansive, totally uncharted territory. And, like any good explorer heading into the unknown, you absolutely need a map. So, we're going to unpack exactly how to map that mental territory for some serious academic growth and, more importantly, deep godly growth. But first, let's get real for a second. Have you ever been reading a textbook, your eyes are doing the work, scanning the words, you get to the very bottom of the page, and boom, you suddenly realize you have literally zero idea what you just read? I mean, your eyes were moving, but your brain, it absorbed absolutely nothing. We call this autopilot reading, and trust me, it is a completely universal struggle. Your mind was probably a million miles away, maybe thinking about lunch or your weekend plans. Well, we need a cure for this, and that is exactly what our mental map is for. The ultimate cure for this autopilot mode is an incredibly powerful concept called metacognition. And I know it sounds like a really big, complex word, but the definition is actually beautifully simple. Metacognition just means being aware of your own thought process. It is literally thinking about your thinking. So instead of just letting your brain run on autopilot in the background, you're stepping back. You're actively watching how your mind works, how it processes information, and how it reacts to the stuff you were learning. It is a total game changer of a life skill. Here is a quick look at our roadmap for today. 1. Thinking about your thinking. 2. Building your mental map. 3. Before, during, and after. 4. Reviewing your journey. 5. Growing in godly reflection. And finally, 6. Education fused with morality. Let's get going. Starting off with Section 1, Thinking about your thinking. Now, this whole concept, it's not just some modern educational strategy someone dreamed up recently. Notice how perfectly it aligns with biblical wisdom. Acts 20:28 gives us the instruction to pay careful attention to yourselves. See how that biblical command perfectly mirrors our academic goal here? Taking a really careful, intentional look at your internal state, your thought processes, and your heart, that is foundational. It's all about actually taking ownership of your mind instead of just letting it wander aimlessly.
And the really amazing thing about metacognition is that it isn't just some clever reading trick for English class. If you master thinking about your thinking, you are building an incredible problem-solving skill that applies to literally every single subject you study. Whether you're wrestling with a complex math equation, analyzing a historical event, or running a science experiment, the ability to stop, evaluate your own understanding, and adjust your approach, that is exactly what separates a passive student from a highly successful active learner.
All right, moving right along to Section 2, Building your mental map. To actually map your mind, you need a tool, right? Enter the Metacognitive Journal. You can use a physical notebook or a digital document, whatever works for you, but you absolutely must set it up with 3 specific columns: question, when I asked it, and answer or outcome. This setup is non-negotiable, honestly, because it forces you to document exactly where your brain was at any point during the expedition. It takes the totally invisible process of thinking and finally makes it visible. Let's jump into Section 3, Before, During, and After. So how do we actually use those 3 columns? Well, we apply them sequentially as we explore a text. Just think of this as the chronological timeline of your expedition. At minute 0, before you even read a single word, you're in the pre-reading phase, making predictions and plotting the path. Then, around minute 15, you're in the during reading phase, stopping to check your surroundings and clarify things. And finally, at minute 30, when you close the book, you enter the post-reading phase, reflecting on the terrain you just conquered. Let's look at what that first phase actually looks like in practice. A pre-reading entry might look something like this. Under your question column, you write, what is the main conflict? Under when I asked it, you just note before reading. By doing this before you even start, you're priming your brain. You are basically giving your mind a specific target to hunt down. Instead of passively scanning words, you're now actively on a mission to find that conflict. And as you read, you eventually fill in that 3rd column with your outcome, found in Chapter 2. Then, as you venture deeper into the material, you use the during reading entry. Say you hit a confusing part, your question might be, why did the author use this metaphor? You log that you ask this on page 45. Stopping right there on page 45 to ask about a specific literary device ensures you are actively grasping the imagery in that exact moment. You're not just skimming past the hard parts, you are actively wrestling with them. And then you answer it. It creates imagery to show fear. Doing this, it absolutely kills autopilot reading. Gone. Finally, we hit the post-reading phase. Your entry here might be a big picture question, something like, what would happen if the setting changed? You log this as after reading. Once you finish a chapter or a book, asking these macro-level questions really helps you digest the entire story as a whole. It moves you way past just knowing the basic facts of the plot, and it opens the door to much deeper discussions and a truly profound understanding of the material. Which brings us to Section 4, Reviewing Your Journey. Here is the absolutely crucial point. Just writing these things down is not the finish line. Once you've built this journal, you have to actually look back at it. Regularly reviewing those columns is going to reveal some incredible personal insights. As you scan back over your entries from the past few weeks, you can literally track how your understanding changed over time. You'll clearly see which reading strategies worked best for you. You might even notice some fascinating patterns, like, hey, maybe 80% of your questions are all about vocabulary. Well, that tells you exactly what you need to focus on. Or you might spot specific concepts where you repeatedly struggle, which highlights exactly where you need to go ask a teacher for help. It is literally mapping out your personal path to improvement. Let's transition over to Section 5, Growing in Godly Reflection. What's really brilliant here is how this academic tool effortlessly translates into a way to check your own heart. Listen to the powerful words of Psalm 139. Search me, God, and know my heart. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Just like we track our academic questions to understand a book's plot, we have to actively examine our own thoughts, our motivations, and our daily actions to ensure we're walking closely with God. Metacognition helps you pause in real life and ask, wait, why did I react that way? Or what was my actual motive in saying that? That kind of deep reflection, that is the absolute foundation of genuine spiritual maturity. And finally, Section 6, Education Fused with Morality. This brings us to the core philosophy we're talking about today, combining sharp minds with strong character. Just think about education without morality for a second. Being incredibly smart is, frankly, completely pointless if you lack the moral compass to guide your decisions. Without morality, even the most highly educated people continue to make bad choices that end up deeply hurting themselves and the people around them. But when you fuse education with biblical morality, it ensures your knowledge is used to build up, not tear down. That combination leads to genuine growth, true wisdom, and real peace. And you know, this isn't just some abstract philosophical idea. It is a direct biblical promise. Romans 8 tells us that the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. True peace of mind isn't just found in getting straight A's or being the smartest person in the room. It is the absolute promise for those who keep their minds spiritually anchored. When you use your metacognition to reflect not just on your math homework, but on your spiritual walk, you are actively inviting that profound peace into your life. So 8th graders, here is your challenge for today's explainer. How will you use your metacognitive journal today? Because true power, it isn't just in what you read, it's in understanding the mind that does the reading. An intentional, reflective mind will transform your education, and for sure, it will completely transform your daily walk with God. So, the only question left is, are you ready to map your territory?